Before we begin, I thought it would be fun if everyone lets me know in the comments where they're watching this video from. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's start today's episode. April Annette Duboce. April Annette Duboce, a 21-year-old resident of Greenville County, South Carolina, was married to David Randall Duboce. Their marriage was troubled, leading to a legal separation. On February 11th, Greenville County Police were called to April's apartment on Hudson Road after she had not been seen for over a week. Upon entering, officers discovered her body inside. Investigators determined that April had died under suspicious circumstances approximately 9 days earlier. They suspected David was responsible for her death, leading to his arrest in 2006. However, due to a lack of sufficient evidence, he was ultimately released. April's close friend, Brandy Jones, described her as lively and full of energy, saying, "On the outside, she was sassy, spunky, and the life of the party, always smiling. But when she was alone, she was scared, she was broken." On March 18, 2021, 55-year-old David Duboce was arrested once again in connection with the case. Lieutenant Ron Flood explained that over the past year, the Sheriff's Office's new cold case unit had reopened the investigation. Through their efforts, they uncovered new evidence that established probable cause, leading to the determination that David Duboce was responsible for the death of his then legally separated wife. He is currently being held at the Greenville County Detention Center without bond. Sheriff Hobart Lewis issued a statement regarding the arrest, saying, "While I cannot begin to comprehend the hardship that families endure when they tragically lose a loved one and the case remains unsolved, I can assure you that our office is committed to revisiting each and every one of these cold cases in hopes of delivering justice. I am incredibly proud of the dedication our investigators have shown in pursuing these cases, and I hope we can provide even a small sense of closure to those affected by these tragedies." At this time, authorities have not disclosed the specific details of the new evidence that led to David's arrest. Moving on to the next case. Elaine Park. Elaine Park was a free-spirited and creative young woman from La Crescenta, California. With a deep passion for acting and a vivid imagination, she thrived on artistic expression. However, her promising future was tragically cut short when she mysteriously vanished in January 2017, a disappearance that remains unsolved. Her case left friends, family, and the broader Los Angeles community searching for answers amid an overwhelming sea of uncertainty. Born on September 24, 1996, in Los Angeles, California, Elaine was the first child of Ray and Susan Park. A few years later, she became an older sister when her younger brother Dustin was born. From an early age, Elaine embraced social activities and loved exploring her creativity. She enjoyed performing for her family and had a natural ability to make friends wherever she went. In school, she was known for her outgoing personality and constant desire to create. However, as she approached her preteen years, she faced a challenge familiar to many children: her parents' divorce. When her father, Ray, moved out, the news deeply affected Elaine. At her young age, the separation of her family cast a shadow over Elaine, leaving her with a lingering sense of melancholy. She would later admit that the experience led to bouts of depression. However, it did not completely hold her back. As she entered high school, she found various creative outlets to express her emotions. One of her greatest passions was dance and cheerleading. She joined the cheer squad at Crescenta Valley High School in La Crescenta, California, where she lived with her mother and brother. Elaine's dedication to cheer eventually earned her the title of Cheer Squad Champion. She took pride in mentoring younger teammates and helping new members find their place within the team. Alongside cheerleading, she also enrolled in CVHS's theater program, where she developed a deep love for plays and musicals. When she wasn't cheering at football games or performing on stage, Elaine spent much of her free time dancing. A devoted fan of hip-hop, rap, and R&B, her passion for music only grew stronger. She eventually took an interest in singing and even began writing her own lyrics. As she reached adulthood, she recorded a few rap tracks, further exploring her artistic side. After graduating high school, Elaine struggled to settle on a single career path. Her creative interests spanned far beyond just music and dance, leading her to explore multiple artistic pursuits. She developed a strong passion for acting, submitting headshots and audition reels to casting agencies while constantly seeking background roles and bit parts in Hollywood, just a 30-minute drive from her home. Her dedication paid off, landing her roles in films such as Role Models and Crazy, Stupid, Love. Regardless of the project, Elaine poured her heart into everything she did. When she wasn't acting, she spent her time sketching tattoo designs, experimenting with new makeup techniques, or brainstorming fresh and unique fashion ideas. Over time, fashion became one of her greatest passions. She had a remarkable talent for predicting trends and developing marketing strategies, envisioning future spin-offs with the kind of dedication only a true visionary possesses. Elaine often shared these ideas and her dreams of making an impact in the fashion industry with her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Divine Compare, whom she met in 2016. Elaine had recently moved back in with her mother in La Crescenta after losing her waitressing job. During this time, she often shared her fashion designer aspirations with her boyfriend, Divine, known as Div. Divine, the son of film and music producer Zachary Marshall, had met Elaine through their mutual interest in the music industry. She occasionally stayed with him, and one night she poured her heart out over text, passionately discussing her ideas for clothing and branding. Despite her outgoing and expressive nature, her relationship with Divine never fully developed into a lasting partnership. Eventually, in January 2017, Elaine told him she needed space to focus on her future and personal growth, leading them to break off contact. However, their separation was short-lived. A few weeks later, on January 27, 2017, the two reconnected and made plans to see a movie and spend the night together. It appeared to be nothing more than a brief rekindling of their relationship, until the following morning. On January 28, 2017, Elaine left Divine Compare's guest house in Calabasas, California, and was never seen again. The mystery surrounding Elaine Park's disappearance calls for a closer examination of her past, stretching back to events that occurred roughly a year and a half before she vanished. This discussion includes topics of sexual assault, so viewer discretion is advised. Now, let's examine the timeline leading up to Elaine's disappearance. On July 27, 2015, Elaine attended a concert with friends at the Orange County Observatory in Santa Ana, California. The lineup featured artists such as Father and Playboi Carti. Later that night, she was invited backstage by one of the touring managers. While Elaine and her friends initially went together, her friends soon left after feeling uncomfortable. However, Elaine chose to stay and, while backstage, consumed both Xanax and alcohol. At some point during the night, while under the influence of drugs and alcohol, Elaine was sexually assaulted by multiple men. In the days and weeks that followed, she struggled to recall details of the night but feared that she had been raped. Despite the trauma, she remained mostly silent about the incident, though it weighed heavily on her. Nearly a year later, in July 2016, Elaine was involved in a car accident. She suffered scratches on her hand while helping free people from the second vehicle. Her friend Sadie, who had been driving, also escaped with minor injuries. Throughout the rest of the summer in 2016, Elaine and her mother, Susan, had several arguments regarding an insurance settlement for Elaine's minor injuries. Despite her reluctance, Elaine started seeing a chiropractor, and this caused further strain in their relationship. In November of that year, Elaine met Divine Compare, the son of entertainment producer Zachary Marshall. On Tuesday, November 8th, Elaine and Divine began what would turn into an on-again, off-again relationship. Over the next few weeks, the two spent a lot of time together, often smoking weed with friends and chatting about their lives via text messages. They discussed plans to attend a concert together, and there was also a conversation about Divine's car breaking down, which is now available to the public. Unfortunately, Elaine's luck took a turn for the worse as December 2016 arrived. She moved back in with her mother in La Crescenta after staying with her friend Daisy. At the same time, Elaine was fired from her waitressing job and dropped out of classes at Pierce College. On December 1st, she confided in Divine over text about a fashion design and marketing concept she had been developing. This moment highlights Elaine's creative spirit and the promise she held in her artistic pursuits. However, in the following weeks, tensions escalated between Elaine and her mother over money and petty cash issues. Around the same time, Elaine's birth father, Ray, made his final child support payment to Susan. Sometime in mid to late December, Elaine seemed to go through a personal crisis, unfollowing and blocking her childhood friends on all her social media accounts. Her crisis deepened throughout December as painful reminders and memories of her 2015 sexual assault began to resurface. Elaine reached out to Michael, a touring manager she had known, asking for answers. While Michael couldn't recall specific details of the assault, he admitted it wouldn't surprise him. When he asked why she was contacting him over a year and a half later, Elaine confessed that she could no longer suppress the memories and that her art and design work weren't helping her cope. She needed answers. On December 28, 2016, Elaine posted a Twitter thread discussing her experience with the trauma of sexual assault. She mentioned that the people responsible know damn well who they are, but clarified that she wouldn't pursue legal action or confront them. Over the next few days and into the new year, her text conversations with Divine grew more distant and less frequent. On January 3rd, Elaine broke up with Divine through text, telling him, "I need this year to really invest in myself right now, so I'm gonna grind and spend time alone until I can get myself real right." Divine responded, expressing his desire to fight for their relationship, stating that Elaine was all he had. On the night of January 20th, Divine sent Elaine a series of texts, saying he was in Utah but wanted a response from her. He told her she couldn't keep holding in whatever she was feeling and that he also needed to share something with her. He reassured her that he would be there to support her, no matter what. A week later, in the early hours of January 26th, at 3:45 a.m., Elaine called her mother, Susan, to report that her car had run out of gas and the battery was dead. Susan and her boyfriend Jeff drove to Elaine's location to deliver gas and jump-start her car. The next day, on Friday, January 27th, Susan sent Elaine $20 and asked for repayment by 6 p.m. Later that afternoon, around 5 p.m., Elaine visited her father Ray to pick up some cash for the weekend. Ray later mentioned that his daughter seemed perfectly normal during their interaction. At 6:01 p.m., Susan sent Elaine a text about the money she had lent her. A little over an hour later, at 7 p.m., Elaine's friend Sadie stopped by to pick up her hair curling wand. Elaine handed it to her without saying a word. As Sadie got back into her car, she turned around to see Elaine locking the front door before leaving the house. Within the next 30 minutes, Elaine made her way to her car and left La Crescenta to meet Divine Compare at his place in Calabasas, California. She arrived in Calabasas around 8:10 p.m. At 9:04 p.m., 54 minutes later, Elaine responded to Susan's texts, assuring her she would return the money later that night. Just a minute later, at 9:05 p.m., Susan replied, asking Elaine to keep her word. Less than an hour and a half later, at 10:20 p.m., Elaine and Divine took an Uber from Calabasas to the AMC movie theater in Woodland Hills. Before the Uber arrived, Elaine briefly stopped at her car, and CCTV footage from the Compare residence captured the scene. Another vehicle was visible on camera, but it left the driveway just as the Uber pulled up. Over 2 hours later at 12:43 a.m. on Saturday, January 28, 2017, Divine and Elaine returned from the movies in Calabasas as captured by the Compare family's CCTV. At 3:20 a.m., Elaine checks her social media profiles on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat for the final time. Not long after, at around 4 a.m., Divine wakes up to Elaine suffering a panic attack. He would later describe her as shaky and distressed, singing to herself but not speaking. Closer to sunrise, despite many pleas from Divine, who believes Elaine is not in a proper state of mind to drive, she dresses quickly and departs, not saying a word to Divine. At exactly 6:04:53 a.m., Elaine is captured by CCTV cameras walking out of Divine's guest house through the parking area and to her car. A couple of minutes pass by and at 6:07 a.m., Elaine pulls away from the Compare family's driveway and through the gates of the community where a camera picks up Elaine's license plates. This is the last confirmed sighting of Elaine Park. At 6:28 a.m., Elaine's location is shared with Divine via their Apple iMessage app while her Facebook Find My Friend activity is initiated simultaneously. It's unknown whether or not this is manually set by Elaine or just an automatic update. Divine does not respond to the iMessage notice. 45 minutes later at 7:13 a.m., new cookies appear on Elaine's iPhone for the Pandora Music app sends an automated message asking if she's still listening to music. Between 10:13 and 10:15 a.m., Divine attempts to call Elaine 3 times but none of the calls connect through. At 10:50 a.m., Susan Park calls her boyfriend, Jeff, followed by a since-deleted text at 12:04. An hour later at 1:10 p.m., Elaine's friend Sadie texts her asking what she's doing today but receives no response. Between 1:33 and 1:34 p.m., Divine tries calling Elaine 2 more times, still unsuccessfully. At around the same time between 1:36 and 1:42 p.m., Susan attempts to reach her daughter 3 times by phone but she can't get through. 2 hours later at 3:42 p.m., the last ping to originate from Elaine's phone hits a cell tower in Malibu, California. Later that night, 2 ticks before midnight, Susan calls the Crescenta Valley Sheriff's Office to report Elaine missing. They ask if Elaine has ever run away from home before and Susan says yes. Susan later claims the sheriff's office recommended she wait 1 more day as Elaine would most likely be voluntarily missing. The following day on Sunday, January 29th, Susan expresses a desire to her boyfriend, Jeff, to officially file the missing persons reports believing that Elaine would have paid her back by now had she been okay. At 9:40 a.m. on Monday, January 30th, Susan reaches out to Elaine's friend, Sadie, saying she is worried and that Elaine's makeup is gone along with a blue traveling bag she may have taken to Divine's. Finally, Susan calls the same sheriff's station as well as Glendale Police Department at 11:48 a.m. to report Elaine missing. An officer arrives at Susan's La Crosse Center residence that afternoon at 4:25 p.m. where he calls Elaine's father to ask if he knew anything. This is the first time Ray hears of his daughter's disappearance, and says he hasn't seen or heard from Elaine since her visit on Friday the 27th. 2 days later on February 2nd, Susan and Jeff visit Divine's parents. They have no idea where Elaine is and Susan departs only to visit the Lost Hills Sheriff Department to request a ping on Elaine's phone. The station is able to locate a ping from Coral Canyon Road cell tower in Malibu. Later that day, Elaine's car is discovered on the 26,000 block of Coral Canyon Road on the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, California, a 30-minute drive from where she was last seen. The vehicle's doors are unlocked, and the key is in the ignition with the electric turned on, not the engine. Inside the car are her belongings, her black backpack with a laptop inside in the passenger seat, her cell phone, the blue travel bag with toiletries and about $30 all in plain sight. The car is taken in for analysis, and no signs of foul play or break-ins are discovered. The car is in fine condition outside of the battery being dead. A month passes by and no leads are uncovered. On March 2nd, Elaine's Facebook is logged into for the first time and all of her history is deleted. 10 days later on March 10th, a massive search goes underway in Calabasas to find Elaine, but the search efforts turn up empty. 11 days later on March 21st, and the settlement in Elaine's car accident lawsuit is finalized with her name being signed on the documents, and $5,000 awarded to the estates of Elaine Park. 45 days later on May 6, 2017, a cadaver dog search is initiated at the Park residence. They uncover no major clues. Fast forward over 5 years since Elaine's disappearance, and law enforcement is no closer to finding Elaine Park than they were back in 2017, especially after the Compare family and the Park family have been deemed non-suspects by police. Despite a large reward sum being posted, lots of community activism and the work of various investigators and journalists, Elaine's trail has grown cold. The first segment of the CCTV clip shows Elaine walking out of her ex-boyfriend's house, leaving the parking area and supposedly making a stop at her car. However, there is another car with its lights turned on and it turns around through the driveway before leaving the residence, driving away and up the hill in the background. Elaine then returns to the car park area where she approaches the Compare home entry. Before she enters, however, Divine Compare exits himself and follows Elaine back to the driveway. Simultaneously, the Uber they ordered to take them to the cinema drives down the hill toward the house and pulls into the drive. Some viewers claim they can see Elaine and Divine enter two different cars. However, law enforcement have stated they took the same Uber both there and back from the movie theater. The second segment of CCTV footage depicts Elaine and Divine returning from the cinema about 3 hours later. The Uber drops them off and departs as it should, and the couple enters the Compare compound at a normal pace. The third segment of the recording is the most mystifying. At around 6 a.m., Elaine is captured leaving the Compare residence by herself, this time walking at a much more hurried pace. She hops into her car somewhere in the driveway and pulls away from the Calabasas home. Viewers have pointed out something unusual in the video footage, noticing flickering shadows across the left side of the frame just before Elaine disappears from view. Some theorize that this could be a third party watching Elaine from afar and running in the background as she prepares to leave. However, if you review the earlier segments, you'll see the same shadows appear each time Elaine walks toward the driveway in both directions. These shadows are simply cast by Elaine's own figure from a light off-screen, not a hidden clue. A more useful piece of evidence is the license plate reader footage at the end of the video. This footage captures Elaine's vehicle as it leaves the Compare family's gated community, providing a clear image of her license plate number, 7NKR261. Anyone with information related to this license plate number from the early morning of January 28, 2017, or anything else seen in the video, is encouraged to call +1 800-28477 or visit lawcrimestoppers.org. As mentioned, the following section discusses sexual assault, and viewer discretion is advised. One common theory surrounding Elaine's disappearance is that her boyfriend, Divine Compare, might be involved. While it's clear he was the last person to see her alive, some point to his connections with musicians and rappers in the Los Angeles area and speculate that he could be linked to the sexual assault Elaine endured in 2015. While Divine wasn't at the concert in question in July of 2015, he did have connections with some of the performers and people backstage who may or may not have been there when Elaine was assaulted. People wonder if this is what Divine is referring to in the text messages made available to the public after she breaks up with him, when he says, quotes, "I need to let all this out to you," followed later by, quote, "You can't hold all that in, let it out, what's going on?" People wonder if this is Divine coaxing Elaine to say everything she knows about her assault in 2015 to make sure she isn't about to take the information to the police and expose either Divine's contacts or Divine himself. They back this up with information gathered in 2018 by people part of the investigation who noted that a witness had observed Elaine and Divine getting into a verbal altercation the evening of Thursday, January 27th, and it was over the assault allegations and Divine's role in them. The testimony then stated the following day, the couple didn't actually go to the movies the evening of January 27th, and instead the arguments boiled over before Elaine went missing the next morning, potentially at the hands of Divine or a theoretical accomplice. To accentuate this theory, many point to the CCTV footage and take issue with how it conveniently ends right after Elaine leaves the property, and what follows isn't publicly available. It casts a suspicious light over the Compare family at large and definitely leaves room to wonder. However, there are many pieces to the case that address and refute this theory. First and foremost is that Divine himself has been heavily investigated by law enforcement and private detectives and cleared of all suspicion. That's not all though. Let's look at the materials we have ourselves. We have the text Divine was sending to Elaine after their breakup, and nowhere did it ever show Divine was making threatening comments or showing a lack of support to Elaine. In fact, he was quite supportive of Elaine overall, saying that he would be there for her and that they'd make it to the other side. In interviews with other amateur investigators, Divine stated he never pressed Elaine about her assault experience, and that she was truly attempting to figure it out on her own but was struggling with the weight of holding it all in and not being able to remember it for over a year. There's also the matter of Elaine's tweets from the night of December 28th, where she talks about her emotions and trauma as a result of the assaults, but also the wisdom she wants to give to others. Most notably, at the beginning of the threat, she says that while the people who assaulted her know who they are, she is not out to frame anyone, pursue legal action, or enact justice through accusatory means. Rather, she wants to heal from her trauma on her own terms and leave the law out of it. In addition, one evening before Elaine went missing, she posted a live Periscope stream of a rap she had written. The lyrics very strongly hinting at her relationship and breakup with Divine. Through her rap, Elaine never talked about Divine as if he was connected to her assault, or really about the assault at all. Rather, she explained the reason she and Divine couldn't be together was a difference in morals and materialistic desires. Thus, Elaine both publicly and privately was adamant about not pursuing some sort of legal or vigilante justice. If someone wanted her dead because of that, there's absolutely zero proof Elaine would have tried it anyway, most likely ruling out one of her assaulters or Divine. The only other sensible motive that would pit Divine against Elaine is being upset that they broke up and not wanting it to end like it did. However, as exemplified by the text messages and interviews Divine has taken part in, he has shown no animosity towards Elaine or anger about their relationship. Also, it must be taken into consideration the date Elaine and Divine went on the night before she went missing. A couple facing that much volatility and tension simply doesn't go to the movies together and pretend like everything is normal for a couple of hours. The Uber drivers who drove the pair have since been tracked down and interviewed and have stated they didn't suspect anything was wrong with either Divine or Elaine, that they were hugging and kissing during the car rides and overall sporting a calm demeanor. There was an instance in which the Uber driver said Divine asked Elaine if she was good a couple of times, but Elaine always replied yes and never displayed any sort of warning signs. While the CCTV footage is distressing and adds suspicion to the Compare family, there simply isn't a shred of physical proof or sensible motive that connects them to foul play in the case. So if there are holes in the theory that Divine had something to do with it, what about other love interests or ex-boyfriends in Elaine's life? There was one man from Elaine's past that caught the attention of law enforcement, an underground rapper by the stage name of Lolo. Lolo and Elaine had a short fling sometime in the year leading up to Elaine's disappearance. However, the quick relationship wasn't sunshine and roses. Lolo was quite clingy and creeped out Elaine's closest friends. He would repeatedly call her even after Elaine tried to sever ties, and despite being blocked on multiple numbers, Lolo would find new phones to contact her with. In addition, there were times Lolo would angrily text Elaine saying things like he wanted to fight her for not responding and that, quote, people were gonna die. Most glaring of all was an incident in 2016 in which Elaine and Lolo were pulled over and the car was searched by police. Authorities found an unauthorized firearm in Lolo's backpack, a firearm Elaine had no knowledge of. Elaine was set to testify at Lolo's court hearing on the matter mere weeks after she went missing, and some wonder if Lolo was involved to prevent her testimony from evidence. Not only that, but Lolo was released from jail pre-trial just 2 days before Elaine disappeared in Venice Beach, just a quick drive south on the Pacific Coast Highway from where Elaine's car was discovered in Malibu. Could he have left imprisonment and done something to Elaine to protect himself from his firearm charge? There are two things that suggest this isn't the case. First, Elaine's testimony wouldn't alter the outcome of Lolo's charges. Elaine didn't know he had the gun and therefore couldn't give any sort of insight into when or how he obtained it. So had she just told the truth, which is what her friends told her to do, she would have explained her perspective and been dismissed without altering the ruling. Second, Lolo was eventually tracked down by both law enforcement and private investigators. The PIs were the ones to first alert Lolo of Elaine's disappearance, and his reaction was one of genuine concern. He stated that he had stopped attempting to contact Elaine after his arrest and her continued pleas for space, but still thought about her every day. While it definitely appears he had an unhealthy obsession with Elaine, Lolo fully cooperated with the PIs and later the authorities, consistently making offers to help look for Elaine and provide as much assistance as he could. Without a true motive and taking into consideration his behavior after the disappearance, the theory of his involvement is highly unlikely. Recently, one theory has caught fire amongst many across the internet. One suggesting that Susan Park is herself responsible for her daughter's disappearance. Like all missing person cases, the parents are usually the first to have fingers pointed at them both by police and passerby, and it makes sense to some degree. They are usually the closest to the victim, and some of the last people to make contact with them. In the case of Susan, her portrayal in certain media regarding Elaine's disappearance has caught many by surprise and led to a larger network of people who want to jump on the coincidences and misrepresentations of her actions. Susan's suspicion lingers on a few aspects of her relationship with her daughter. Most notably their propensity for arguing in both verbal and sometimes physical conflict. Susan and Elaine would fight about money even in amounts as low as $5, ending up in cursing matches loud enough to wake the neighbors and sending texts with intense and anger-ridden tones. The pair were not close and spent more time bickering than getting along, but in the end that's how the entire family was. Elaine often spoke to her friends about how discordant her family life was. Since Ray and Susan got divorced in February 2008, and even while they were all still under the same roof, the family didn't spend much time bonding, and the blame for who caused the divorce was thrown around even onto Elaine. There was very little love and nurturing once Elaine and her brother entered their preteen and teenage years, and the connection that a lot of families have with one another simply didn't exist. Susan will admit much the same. Many people point to Susan's admission of being a bad mother and failing her daughter as a potential clue in Elaine's disappearance. While Susan acknowledges that she and Elaine didn't have the best relationship, it doesn't automatically mean she would go to extreme lengths to harm her daughter. Susan has also spoken about the cultural differences between Asian American families and traditional American families, highlighting how these differences are often misunderstood. The notion that families can't engage in verbal conflicts without it being seen as a precursor to violence is something she's commented on. The text Susan sent to Elaine, telling her to die, and using cruel language, are disturbing, especially given the events that followed. However, the reality is that these kinds of family conflicts are sadly common in many households around the world. Just because Susan's actions or words are outside what we might consider normal doesn't mean she's a murderer. It could point to her being an abusive parent and a poor guardian, but it doesn't make her a killer. The theory also draws attention to Susan's actions after Elaine went missing, like changing her alibi at various points or how quickly she disposed of Elaine's belongings, rented out her room, and cleaned her clothes that may have contained important evidence. But the facts show that the police repeatedly told Susan there were no leads and nothing to investigate. Though there was speculation that Elaine might have gone missing involuntarily, the police had no reason to collect her belongings, and they would have done so if they thought there was a need. Ultimately, how people grieve and react to trauma varies from person to person. While it's typical for parents of missing children to preserve their child's bedroom and belongings for years, the fact that a mother in another case doesn't do so doesn't imply guilt. Ultimately, Susan did keep a few things of Elaine's just in case she returned. Finally, we must shed light on the amount of effort Susan has put into finding Elaine. Nobody who makes someone else disappear goes to the lengths Susan has gone to try and put a spotlight on the victim's case. Both the Park parents have been fully cooperative with both outside investigators and law enforcement. Susan has made countless media appearances, and despite some of them pitting her own past against her, continuously pleads for help to find Elaine. The risk of exposure would be far too high had she committed a crime. We may not like the way she treated Elaine and the things she said to her daughter, but we cannot conflate coincidence or bias with fact. So if someone close to her didn't make Elaine disappear, could it have been a stranger? It is certainly possible. 3 routes to this theory exist. The first path is one taken by someone Elaine made contact with in the year before her disappearance, but not related to the assault in 2015. The most likely suspect would be someone connected to the drugs that Elaine would sometimes involve herself in. It's a known fact via the text messages between her and Divine that Elaine frequently smoked weed and purchased weed and other weed-related paraphernalia around Los Angeles. While weed was legalized in California the same month, Elaine and Divine started hanging out. In November of 2016, studies have shown that 80 to 90% of cannabis purchasing went through underground channels. Despite this, cannabis wasn't the only drug Elaine had connections to either. While she wasn't a dealer herself nor did she frequently consume such drugs, it was known that Elaine had contacts for dealers with substances such as Xanax and codeine. While drug dealing isn't always hand in hand with other violence or criminal activity, it definitely opens up the pool of suspicious people Elaine may have interacted with. The second path to the outsider theory is simply someone Elaine ran into the morning she left Divine's house. We know that Elaine loved to drive, her Divine's own words. He spoke about how that was her way to decompress and wind down, and maybe that's why she left so quickly on the 28th to get out of the panic spiral and go for a drive. We also know that a little while after her car was leaving the gated community in Calabasas, her location was shared with Divine and she started listening to music on Pandora. Both natural occurrences had she planned to be driving for a bit. This is where the theory truly becomes a theory. It would make sense that maybe along the way, Elaine wanted to drive along the Pacific Coast Highway overlooking the ocean and grew tired after a sleepless night only to park her car by Coral Canyon for a nap. This is where it was found 4 days later. So if she did stop to rest, maybe someone stopped by and pretended they needed help or simply kidnapped her when no one was looking. This theory struggles to hold weight when you look deeper at the facts. It's agreed upon by many that Elaine's vehicle was probably planted at the location it was found by her kidnappers rather than it being the origin of Elaine's disappearance due to how neat everything was found in the vehicle and how there was no trace of Elaine found in the vicinity. The spot where Elaine's car was found is also a very busy section of Malibu and has frequent tourists stopping by even at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. If something were to have happened to Elaine against her will, someone would have heard something or seen something. People also claim there's no way the car would have been able to sit in the location it was at for 4 days without being ticketed or towed, or at least observed by police. However, that section of the Pacific Coast Highway is known for parked cars sitting along the coast for days if not weeks at a time, and it is totally reasonable that the LA County Sheriff missed it if not completely ignored it. The third and final path to an outsider theory is that a serial killer is operating in or around Malibu, California, and law enforcement in the area has failed to make arrests allowing people like Elaine to become a victim. In this general area of Malibu, there has been a string of disappearances and murders in the last decade plus, most famously featuring the disappearance and death of Mitris Richardson and the murders at Malibu Creek State Park. The latter crimes were covered up by the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station, which had a long history of scandals and similar legal issues, including releasing Matt Rice in the middle of the night instead of holding her until her family was able to pick her up the next day, as reported on by CC Woods of the local Malibu. She has also shed light on this case while helping to advocate for Elaine Park and believes there may be more to the disappearances. It is possible Elaine pulled over on the PCH, left her stuff in her car, hiked the hills in Malibu until she went too far and ended up in the wrong hands. It is a little far-fetched but still a potential explanation. The final theory put forth in Elaine's case is suicide. Some of the precursors are there. Elaine was suffering from a mental health break due to the trauma of her assault and displaying signs of reclusiveness from her friends whom she had been slowly blocking on social media. She was also feeling alienated from home, and the constant bickering with her mother regarding the money she owed could have been a breaking point. Combined with the bizarre and hurried morning she had with Divine before she went missing, it is possible Elaine got in her car, drove to the beach, and decided she would try an alternative way to escape the turmoil and trauma. Some say this is highly unlikely, that she wouldn't have left her phone in her car and at least would have taken it with her, but that doesn't mean anything. It's too often we assume that just because the younger generation grew up with phones in their pockets that they are all addicted and cannot go a few minutes without being online. It simply isn't true. A lot of people who are overwhelmed and dealing with anxiety, depression, and panic disorder want nothing to do with what's on their phone and want to be isolated and alone. If Elaine was struggling with social pressures and the constant texts and calls from her mother, it totally makes sense that Elaine would want to leave her phone behind if she was going to distress for a while, if not depart for good. Elaine could also have had a bad reaction to drugs she may have taken during the last night she spent with Divine. Divine has said the pair didn't consume drugs or alcohol on the night of the 27th, but those statements were taken in front of his parents, and the use of such substances cannot be 100% ruled out. Maybe he tried to persuade Elaine from leaving that morning or driving because she was under the influence of something, or she simply smoked too much weed and grew paranoid. This may have led to a lot of guilt, and while Divine should absolutely never hide information like this, Elaine could have been in an altered state, and taking her phone with her wherever she went was simply an afterthought. Again, it's hard to believe Elaine could have disappeared in the area that she did and committed suicide without a body ever appearing, but stranger things have happened in the hills of Malibu, and with the law enforcement's shady history, it's not impossible they missed a major clue. It should also be noted that the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station does not have jurisdiction in Elaine's case. That belongs to Glendale Police Department due to Elaine's address falling in their precinct's jurisdiction. But the drastic difference in locals for each law enforcement agency makes it hard to coordinate searches and know exactly where to look, which still unacceptably falls in the hands of police. The communication needed to be clearer for search efforts to go underway as they should have, and it leaves so many theories to Elaine's disappearance unfortunately open-ended. The case of Elaine Park is as tragic as they come. The fate of a young woman with such a big heart and such massive potential is unknown, vanishing without a shred of physical evidence left behind. It truly is as maddening as cold case investigations come, and makes drawing a conclusion nearly impossible. In our estimation, we believe the most likely scenario is a combination of the theories previously mentioned. Elaine most likely suffered some sort of mental collapse with the trauma of her assault weighing down on her, and the panic attacks restraining her physically and emotionally. It is what made her leave in such a mad rush on the morning of January 28, 2017, and the lack of support from either friends or family only added to her feelings of being confused and unwanted. While we believe Elaine was under psychological distress, we don't believe she committed suicide, mostly because of the situation with her car. We believe she went somewhere to cope with her newfound state of panic, potentially under the influence of drugs, and ran into someone who ultimately took advantage of a woman desperate for help, much like someone took advantage of her in July of 2015. Whoever this was then brought Elaine's car somewhere away from the crime to a place where parked cars are constantly abandoned along the coast of the Pacific Ocean in Malibu, California. Here, they left behind Elaine's belongings to stage a runaway. While there's an argument to be had about Elaine running away and leaving her phone behind, no one runs away and leaves plain cash behind. That's the one thing you would need if you were planning to stage a disappearance. No. Elaine's life was purposely positioned to warrant the least amount of suspicion on foul play, and in the end that's exactly where we ended up anyway. Who this perpetrator is anyone's best guess, but it is most likely not Divine, Lolo, or Elaine's family. While we can't rule it out 100%, it would take a huge piece of physical evidence to make that scenario a dominant lead. As gut-wrenching as it is to walk away from such an in-depth investigation without a conclusive hypothesis, it should not take away from the efforts we continue to make in our search for Elaine. While it may seem unlikely, there remains a small possibility that Elaine is out there, alive and well. It is up to all of us to bring her home, and if not, at least to bring closure and justice to Ray, Susan, and Dustin Park. In the meantime, we must continue to honor Elaine's legacy. Despite growing up in a broken home and lacking much love, she was always the first to give love to others. She nurtured deep connections with friends and put her heart into everything she pursued. Elaine was on her way to becoming an iconic fashion designer, a radiant actress, a dancer, a talented lyricist, a powerful poet, and above all, a passionate and charismatic artist. She was a survivor, her spirit filled with courage and strength. She spoke openly, offering her voice to others who might not have one, and gave them comfort through her perseverance. She had dreams, just like everyone else, and so much more to share with the world. It's our responsibility to keep those dreams alive and allow her creativity to re-enter the world. Even if Elaine Park remains missing, the positive impact she made will never fade, and the goodwill she embodied will never be erased. Her story will endure, and her legacy will continue to shine. Moving on to the next case. Flora Stevens. In 1975, 36-year-old Flora Stevens lived in Sullivan County, New York. She worked at the Concord Hotel and was married to Robert Stevens. On August 3rd of that year, Robert dropped her off at Community General Hospital in Monticello, New York, for a doctor's appointment. However, when he returned to pick her up, Flora was nowhere to be found. After searching for her without success, Robert reported her missing. Over the years, detectives periodically revisited the case, but no significant leads ever emerged. In February, the Sullivan County Sheriff's Office received a call from a New York State Police investigator regarding unidentified skeletal remains found in southern Orange County. The woman's remains bore a resemblance to Flora's general description, leading the investigator to seek DNA from any surviving relatives for identification. Instead, investigators uncovered a surprising clue: someone in Massachusetts had been using Flora's social security number. Detectives tracked down the social security number to an assisted living facility in Lowell, Massachusetts. Staff at the facility confirmed that the number belonged to Flora Harris, who had been at the facility since February 2001. Investigators decided to go talk to 78-year-old Flora, but found she suffers from dementia and is unable to speak more than 1 or 2 words at a time. She did recognize her ID from the Concord Hotel as her own. Officials were able to trace Flora's medical records back about 30 years and learned she spent time in a nursing home in New Hampshire and at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital in Manhattan. Due to her illness, the circumstances surrounding Flora's disappearance from Monticello in 1975, as well as where she went afterward, remain a mystery. Adding to the challenge, authorities have been unable to find any living relatives. When shown a photograph of herself as a young woman, Flora responded, "Me?" And when presented with a picture of her husband, Robert, she recognized him by name. This confirmed to investigators that Flora Stevens and Flora Harris were indeed the same person. As for Robert, he sadly never learned the truth about his wife's disappearance, and he has since passed away. Moving on to the next case. Kelsey Berreth. From a young age, Kelsey Berreth was captivated by the idea of flying. Growing up on her family farm in Moses Lake, Washington, she would often watch crop dusters in awe, dreaming of someday taking to the skies. After high school, Kelsey pursued her dream by enrolling in a flight program at a local community college. Not only did she become a licensed pilot, but she also found work as a flight instructor, eager to share her passion with others. In 2015, she crossed paths with Patrick Frazee, a rancher and farrier from Florissant, Colorado, through an online dating site. Though Patrick lived over 1,100 miles away, their connection quickly grew, and Kelsey eventually moved to Colorado to work at a flight school. Soon after, the couple discovered they were expecting a child. In October 2017, they welcomed their daughter, Kaylee. On November 22, 2018, Kelsey and her 1-year-old daughter went grocery shopping in Woodland Park, Colorado. 3 days later, a coworker received a message from Kelsey, stating she would be taking the rest of the week off. A week after Kelsey disappeared, her family reported her missing when she failed to respond to any calls or messages. The last known location of her phone was traced to Gooding, Idaho, a town about 700 miles from her home in Colorado. Patrick, her fiancé at the time, quickly became the primary suspect in her disappearance. On December 14, authorities executed a search warrant at his home. The following day, they announced a $25,000 reward for any information related to the case. Patrick told investigators that he had been in intermittent contact with Kelsey for 3 days after she was last seen. He claimed they had broken up, and Kelsey appeared to be distressed, asking him to take care of their daughter for a while because she was feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. He expressed concern about her well-being. At first, authorities considered the possibility that Kelsey might have simply left her life behind due to stress. However, when Kelsey's brother discovered a blood smear on the toilet in her condo, it became clear that her disappearance was likely the result of something far more sinister. In a turn of events, 1 week later, Frazee was arrested as the authorities discovered possible evidence in the case. Kelsey and Frazee's daughter stayed in the custody of Kelsey's parents. On October 28, 2019, the trial for Frazee started. During the investigation, the detectives found that Frazee enlisted his mistress, an Idaho nurse and mother of two, Crystal Lee Kenny, 3 times to take the life of Kelsey. He tried to convince her by stating that Kelsey was an abusive mom, and that he was scared that she would hurt their daughter. The first time, he directed Crystal Lee to knock on Kelsey's door and hand her coffee laced with sedatives. She delivered the coffee but not the substances. The second time, he sent her to Kelsey's home with a metal pipe and instructions to use it. Crystal Lee backed off and left the pipe in the driveway. The third time, he told her to wait outside Kelsey's home with a baseball bat and swing away at her. But Crystal Lee refused. By that time, Frazee was so frustrated that he finally decided to take Kelsey's life himself. He convinced Kelsey to play a game where she tried to guess the scent of different candles. After tying a sweater around her eyes as a makeshift blindfold, Frazee struck his unsuspecting fiancée in the head with a bat, while their young daughter was still in the house. A blood spatter expert testified in court that Frazee beat her with the bat 10 to 15 times. Jennifer Veman, a senior deputy district attorney in Colorado's 4th Judicial Circuit, said, after entering Kelsey's home with the key Frazee had provided, Crystal Lee encountered a significant blood pool on the floor in the living room. There was blood on the walls. There was blood on the couch, on the TV, on tables, in the kitchen. She added, as she spends hours cleaning up this horrific bloody crime scene, she bags up items that cannot be cleaned, pillows, baby toys. Crystal Lee recalled that as she cleaned the scene at Kelsey's home, Frazee called, telling her to be sure she left no evidence behind and to look for knocked-out teeth. After helping Frazee, Crystal Lee watched as he set Kelsey's remains on fire at his ranch in Colorado. Although she had agreed to assist him, she intentionally left behind blood spots, knowing that authorities would find them later. She then returned to Idaho with Kelsey's phone, using it to send misleading text messages to both Frazee and Kelsey's employer before ultimately destroying it. During the trial, prosecutors presented phone records, surveillance footage, and the testimony of a jailhouse informant who revealed that Frazee had written him notes from prison, asking him to eliminate key witnesses in the case, including Crystal Lee and Kelsey's mother, Cheryl. On November 18th, Patrick Frazee was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, along with an additional 156 years. Crystal Lee, who had initially been sentenced to 3 years, had her sentence reduced to 18 months in 2021. Frazee sought to appeal his conviction, claiming juror misconduct in the original trial and questioning the credibility of the prosecution's key witness. His defense team also argued that there was insufficient evidence, as Kelsey's body had never been found. On December 29, 2022, the original verdict was upheld. Moving on to the next case. The murder of Michelle Young. Michelle Marie Fisher, originally from Sayville, New York, relocated to Raleigh in 1995 to attend North Carolina State University. She graduated in 1999 with a degree in accounting. During a night out with friends, Michelle met Jason Lynn Young, and the two eventually married in October 2003. The couple lived in the Enchanted Oaks subdivision near Lake Wheeler in Raleigh with their daughter, Cassidy, who was born in February 2004. In May 2006, the couple was involved in a single-car accident near Brevard when their Mitsubishi veered off a mountain road, rolled down an embankment, and partially submerged in a river. At the time of the accident, Michelle was pregnant but tragically suffered a miscarriage. However, a few months later, she became pregnant again with their second child. On November 3, 2006, Michelle's sister, Meredith Fisher, received a text from Jason asking her to run an errand at their house. When Meredith arrived around 1:30 p.m., she discovered her 29-year-old sister lying face down in the master bedroom, cold, stiff, and covered in blood. She also found the couple's 2-year-old daughter, uninjured, hiding under the sheets of her parents' bed, asking questions about what was wrong with her mother. When Jason arrived at the home, he informed the police that he had left the night before to attend a business meeting in Hillsville, Virginia, and afterward traveled to Brevard, North Carolina, to visit his mother and stepfather. The autopsy revealed that Michelle had died from multiple blows to the head, which caused severe skull fractures and brain hemorrhaging. She had also been strangled, suffered 13 lacerations on the back of her head, had badly bruised lips, and several of her teeth had been knocked out. Investigators found a strand of hair, stuck in blood, clutched in Michelle's left hand. While the autopsy found no evidence of sexual assault, it indicated that she had been struck more than 30 times. During the investigation, detectives discovered additional evidence, including blood in a Ford Explorer seized from Jason. Subsequent testing confirmed that the blood belonged to both Michelle and Jason. In the months leading up to Michelle Young's death, Jason maintained frequent contact with a married woman from Florida named Michelle Money, who was a former sorority sister of his wife. Investigators also discovered that Michelle was under significant stress due to financial issues and was furious about a California vacation Jason had taken without her. Additionally, Jason held substantial life insurance policies on his wife, totaling $1 million, an amount that had been increased shortly before their car accident. Evidence from Jason's computer revealed that he had searched for topics such as anatomy of a knockout, head trauma knockout, and divorce before Michelle's death. Investigators also suspected that Jason may have given their young daughter, Cassidy, an over-the-counter medication around the time Michelle was killed. Further inquiries uncovered that Jason had been having an affair with another woman. Just days before Michelle's death, he sent the woman an email that read, "I do not know how all this happened, but I know how it will end up. 2 broken hearts, but I do not care. I know there is pain in my future, but you are so worth it, even if it is only for a blink in time." Progress Energy, Michelle's former employer, offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. More than a year after the crime, the investigators returned to the house to study marks and stains that had not been analyzed and saw that the house is up for sale. In October 2008, Michelle's mother filed a wrongful demise suit against Jason to try to compel him to answer questions about the case. He had 30 days to respond, but did not. 2 months later, on December 5th, a Wake County judge ruled on the wrongful demise claim, finding that Jason did take the life of his wife, ensuring that he cannot collect on the life insurance policy. Michelle's family was awarded $15,600,000 in damages. Although they never expected to receive any money from Jason, they expressed relief that he was held accountable. Michelle's sister, Meredith, was granted primary custody of Cassidy, who was nearly 5 years old at the time. Jason was given visitation rights on weekends, holidays, and other special occasions. After 37 months of investigation, a grand jury finally indicted Jason on a first-degree murder charge on December 14, 2009. During his trial in June 2011, Jason claimed he was 169 miles away from his home at the time of the crime. However, prosecutors argued that he had left his hotel shortly after checking in, disabled security cameras in a side entrance stairwell, returned home to kill Michelle, and then left their young daughter alone with the body. Following a retrial in March 2012, Jason Young was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Although a third trial was ordered in April 2014, the request was denied in August 2015. Jason is currently serving his sentence at the Piedmont Correctional Institution in Salisbury, North Carolina, a medium security facility. Moving on to the next case. Zachary Marshall. In 2010, 22-year-old Zachary Marshall resided in Bristol County, Massachusetts. He was a new father and worked at his uncle's auto body shop. On December 18, 2010, at 2 a.m., Zachary and a friend were leaving a nightclub in Providence, Rhode Island, when a confrontation erupted between him and a group consisting of several men and a woman. During the altercation, Zachary was stabbed and later succumbed to his injuries at a Rhode Island hospital. In his memory, his family held annual fundraisers to support a scholarship in his name and a fund for his daughter. They also tirelessly sought information about his case. In February 2021, their persistence finally led them to the answers they had been searching for. In February, Jason Lopez was arrested in Garland, Texas in connection of the case. He is currently being held without bail at a Dallas County jail in Texas and awaiting extradition back to Rhode Island. Detective Angelo Avant uncovered new evidence in the case that was brought to the Attorney General's office and led to the arrest. He did not want to specify what the evidence was. Attorney General Peter Nerona said, "The indictment in this case is a major step forward in our efforts to obtain justice for Mr. Marshall and his family have endured a long and difficult journey. A decade is a significant amount of time, and I acknowledge how challenging it has been for Mr. Marshall's loved ones to wait for this moment. While there is still some distance to cover on the path to justice, I am relieved that we have arrived at this stage." Zachary's mother, Diane Marshall, expressed that the news of the arrest brought a wave of emotions and pain. "We are deeply thankful to the Providence Police Department for their dedication and countless hours of hard work on our son Zach's case. We also appreciate the unwavering support from our family and community over the past 10 years. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video, and remember, the search for truth never stops.